Well, and there you go. So is the owl showing? Yeah, it is. Oh, that's weird. All I can see is the screen. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the May LT Senior Services webinar seminar. We're so happy to have you here. We have about 80 in total, some combination of online and people in person. So we're really excited about today's seminar and that you're here today. My name is Cindy Cummings. I'm one of the members of LT Senior Services. LT Senior Services is a nonprofit, and our whole goal is to help older adults and their families. So that is our whole purpose. This is our directory. You'll find a directory in the bag if you just got a bag, but in the directory, you'll see all of our different members. And I'd like to introduce our members real quickly. Library, come up. So each member is just going to talk for 30 seconds and just tell us about their organization.
Hi, everybody. I'm Morgan from the library. We are about to launch our summer reading program. So if you read 5 books over the summer, you can get a free book. So we will launch that June 5th. The other plug I want to make is about our home delivery service. Hopefully y'all have heard me talk about this in the past. If you have friends or neighbors or family members who live in our library district that can't get here because of a medical condition, let us know. We'll contact them. We'll drop by a bag of books once a month. So help us spread the word about that free service. And we'd love to talk your ear off about everything else at the library afterwards.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Janet Brown. I'm Director of Business Development for the Brixton at Horseshoe Bay. We are a new skilled nursing rehab and long-term care facility located in Horseshoe Bay, private owned and operated. And we do good stuff there. We offer physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. We also do outpatient rehab. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
All the way from Horseshoe Bay, and it sure is pretty out there. It doesn't take that long, does it?
No, we're a straight shot down 71, actually. We're right on 71 and 21, 7.
Are you close to Baylor Scott White?
6 months.
6 months. Okay. Now that we have all that reference, I'm going to attempt to read all this. We do have some events that are coming up. For June, our event is going to be about assistive devices and fall prevention. And our speaker is going to be Haley. She is from At Home LPT, and she'll help us with all different kinds of devices that you can use at home. We also have some other projects we're constantly working on. One is property tax exemption, assistance, and emergency preparedness. We're going to continue to work on those projects. We also are really excited. We got a grant from the Ladies of Charity, and it's going to help defray a social event. The social event is going to be homecoming in the fall. So in the fall, we're going to have a homecoming event. We want everybody to wear their colors from their high school, junior high, college, whatever. And we're going to have a link where you can submit pictures from school. We're going to have music from that era. Have hot dogs, popcorn, and things like that. So it's September 23rd. We're super excited. We're so thankful to Ladies of Charity in helping to defray this cost. In addition, we have our Aging Well Expo coming up, and that's going to be on the 26th of September. So be looking for more information about that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Whitney Myers is the owner and founder of Sacred Stories. She has a graduate certificate from University of Connecticut in Life Story Practice and Research, and is a member of the International Center for Life Story Innovations and Practice, ICLIP. She was a presenter at the ICLIP in 2022 conference, and the healing power of storytelling. Is that your topic? That's great. Whitney specializes in story, video biographies, and live review interviews, film production, and editing. And we are so excited to have her here today to tell us a little bit more about her services and how this can help our older adults in Lake Travis.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank y'all for being here today.
No question.
Delighted to see you all here and the folks on Zoom as well. Again, my name is Whitney Myers, and I'm a personal historian, or I like to call myself a life story professional, specializing in legacy or tribute films, or video biographies. So what that means is families or individuals hire me to interview their loved one. And we take the interview, add photos, sometimes music, and we make a mini movie or documentary featuring the stories of life. But I also enjoy speaking to groups like this about storytelling and about listening and about the power of one person sharing their stories and another person listening with compassion and what happens when that occurs. As Cindy said, my business, let's see, not advancing. Now it's probably going to advance like 4 times real fast. You want to help?
Yay, thanks,
Yay. And my business is called Sacred Stories. And if you go to my website, sacredstoriesfilms.com, you'll see my tagline, which is every life is a story worth sharing. And I believe that. I believe every person has a story and a collection, a mosaic of stories. I believe that stories live inside of us and we're made of stories and our stories matter. And your stories matter. And as I was preparing for today, I was thinking about your stories and just the collective history in this very room and on Zoom. And I was thinking about the different reasons why you might have come today to this topic. Maybe a friend dragged you along and said, come check it out. Maybe you're a person who's into genealogy and you want to chronicle your lineage and dates and places and names. You might be a person who collects artifacts for your family or for your organization or a business. Maybe you're a person who wants to preserve and record the stories of someone special in your life, a family member, a friend. And perhaps you don't know what supplies you need or what questions to ask. Maybe you want to share your stories with younger generations. And you have a rich history. And in love, you want to pass along your wisdom and the things that have made you who you are. Or maybe you're a friend or a colleague of mine on Zoom, or just a person that's interested in this popular idea that we hear a lot about today, story. Whatever it is that brought you here, I'm glad you're here. And we have many seniors here this morning, but we also represent different ages and different stages of our lives and different ways that we want to interact with this idea of story. So today what I'm going to do is just give you an overview. I'm going to give you my top seven things that kind of bubbled forth for me as I was preparing for today. 7 things that I've learned in this work that I've done as a personal historian. And my goal is for each person here just take away one resource, one idea, one new way that you might use story in your life. But before I share my top 7, I would like to share with you a little bit of inspiration behind what I do. I could point to many things in my life that have led me to this work that I'm doing now. My family of origin, our conversation, our family story sharing, previous work that I've done, special people in my life, etc. But today I'm going to share one. This is Betty. Betty is part of the inspiration behind what I do. Betty was the first person I formally interviewed in 2017. Betty is my husband's grandmother, and this was the day of our interview together. I say that it was my first formal interview because it was formal, it was intentional. I'm set apart to do this work. I took a videographer with me from Houston, and the videographer filmed, and I interviewed Betty and asked her questions about her life. And I saw what it did for me that day to do that, to participate in that. I saw what it did for Betty, and I heard her tell what that experience was like for her. I saw what it did for our family. And 6 years have passed. I've done more interviews. I've learned a lot along the way and studied, as Cindy mentioned, about this life story work. And I've learned that not all people are like Betty. Surprise, surprise. Not all people are like Betty. Not all people enjoy being on film. Not all people enjoy reminiscing. Not all people can reminisce because of memory loss or other issues. But what's remained for me is the idea that I want to continue on in this work to be a person that tends to stories and helps to document the stories of our lives. And I like to bring Betty along with me sometimes when I speak, just to remind me of both my roots in life and in this work that I'm doing. So moving on, I'm going to present to you Collecting Family Stories, Benefits, and Resources for Capturing the Stories of Our Loved Ones, Whitney Myers, top 7. And you've got your handout, and this is going to follow the resources that I'm going to share are listed in order. So as I speak of them, and you can take notes if you want to, but every resource that I mention is going to be listed on your paper. Number 1, stories are good for you. Stories are good for you. If you've been coming to some of these seminars in the library, many of the topics are about brain health and physical and emotional well-being of senior citizens. Last month's topic was aging in place. It was wonderful. And I took notes in the back, and some of what I heard was about purpose and meaning and about socialization as being something to consider when we consider aging in place. Story is a way that we can improve our physical and emotional well-being. It's certainly a way that we socialize or connect with other people. And I don't have to tell y'all, aging has its challenges, but it can also be a satisfying time in life, a time where unique developmental work is taking place. Young children are gathering, they're enlarging their strength and experience, and older adults are clarifying and deepening and finding use for the things that they have obtained in their lifetimes of learning and adapting. And story is a way that we process all of that. Erik Erikson in the 1960s, some of you may be familiar with him, was a psychologist. He studied psychosocial development, and he found there are 8 stages to human development and different things we work on at each stage of our lives. And he said the task for most older adults, age 65 and up, is to negotiate the tension between integrity, or ego integrity, he called it, and despair. And Erikson and others, Robert Butler, Barbara Haight, determined that coming to a place of integrity versus despair can be aided by life review or a life review process. It can be a tool used by older adults to achieve that final stage of development before the end of life. And scientists found that reviewing life on your own is wonderful through journaling and just through reminiscing on your own in isolation, but sharing the stories of our lives enhances the process. And it's good for everyone. Stories can help us prepare for dying, having someone to talk with, to share with, to consider our own mortality. And so story sharing is beneficial for older adults, but it's beneficial for everyone. No matter our age, stories give us identity. This starts, as y'all know, when we're very young and stories are told to us. And then we grow and we share stories about ourselves and we start to form our identity. We say, I'm smart, I'm kind, I'm a leader, I'm a gardener, like my grandmother was a gardener. We form our identity. And there comes a point for children and adults where we want to know, who were the people that came before me? What were their lives like? How are their lives like mine or different? Sharing our stories helps with problem solving. Stories help us make connections within ourselves. Have you ever talked to someone about your life and they hardly said a thing and you left that day feeling lighter or feeling like now I have a solution how to get from point A to point B? That's what reminiscence does. It helps us make connections between our past, our present, and our future. We think to ourselves, I did that, so I can do this now. Or I don't like what happened then, and I want to make a change. So drawing on our past can teach us how to cope in the present and hopefully give us optimism about facing the future. Stories also help you and me with relationships. As I said, socialization, getting to know someone, just a brief moment, coming to the library and you have an everyday conversation and you say, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? What kinds of things do you enjoy? Or deepening, developing a friendship, rekindling a friendship with someone. Reminiscence and story sharing is how we get to know people, how we make friends, and how we grow more intimate with people in our lives and our relationships. Story is also a way that we give advice and life lessons and how we pass those on, and we share our wisdom and we receive wisdom through the sharing of stories. All of these listed here are some of the integrative, instrumental, and social functions of reminiscence that are based in scientific research, mostly science that's been done over the last 6 years, kind of starting with the seminal work of Robert Butler, who I listed on your paper. People have studied now the various functions of reminiscence and the methods for life story work, like memoir writing and guided autobiography and narrative therapy and therapeutic life review, to name a few. So this is some of the psychology of story sharing, behavioral science, social science, of how stories function. But there's also brain science, neuroscience. And this graphic, I know you can't necessarily read everything, but I just shared this graphic showing you just different parts of the brain that light up when we share our stories. A couple things that are mentioned here. Our brains can sync up with other people's brains. That's the Yuri Hassan research that's listed on your paper. Our brains can sync with people. We can mirror neurons enable us to mirror other people's emotions when we see a movie that affects us or hear another person's story. Dopamine and oxytocin can be released as our brains are activated when we hear stories. It feels good. It lowers our anxiety and our stress. And so I listed a few of the scientists on your paper. You're welcome to look them up. This could be a whole seminar of its own, some of the research behind the science of memory. But I wanted to share this as my number one because there's actual science that sharing stories of our lives is good for us. It's good for our brains. It's good for our bodies and our emotional well-being. Kind of like medicine. Doesn't cost a lot though. Couple books I wanted to mention for you. One is called Remember by Lisa Genova. And Morgan pulled some of the books here that are available. If it's got a green circle, it's available here at the Lake Travis Library. Remember the Science of Memory and the Art of Forgetting by neuroscientist Lisa Genova. It's an excellent book, a New York Times bestseller about the human brain and how it processes memories. And she writes about how memory can be impacted by meaning, by emotion, by sleep, by stress, by context. She also was the author of the book Still Alice, and they didn't pull the book Remember, it may be out right now, but she pulled the book Still Alice, which some of you may have heard of, came out a number of years ago, also a movie about a woman with early onset Alzheimer's, excellent. And Remember is an excellent book as well. Another book I want to mention is The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, the Heath brothers. I know at least one of them has a business background, kind of might be a professor at Stanford or just in the business school there. But in this book, they combine kind of the psychology and brain science to just delve into some of the mysteries of life experiences, why we remember the best moments of our lives, the worst moments of our lives. Often in experience, we remember the last moment. Why we feel more comfortable, they write about when things are certain, but why we feel more alive oftentimes when things aren't certain in our lives. They write about a phenomenon called the reminiscence bump. I think Lisa Genova writes about this as well, which is that many of our memories in later life are from the period of about 18 to 35. It like spikes up that we remember more during that time of our lives. And the reason why is because we're experiencing so much change in the season. Our first kiss, or our first time moving away from home, or having children. And we tend to remember those things where lots of change is happening. Number two. Stories are good for us. So my number one was stories are good for you. Number two, stories are good for us. And by us, I mean communities and families and organizations that we're a part of, our wider human family. Stories bring healing and they bring good to our world. They bond us, they bind us, they open us up to something new. One of my favorite studies that I've discovered in recent years is a study that came out of Emory University about 15 years ago. Dr. Robin Fivish led this study, and her colleague Marshall Duke worked with young people. And they found, they developed this do you know scale, which I have copies of up here. If you want to see the questions, they actually asked the young people 20 questions. Do you know these things about your family? And the young people that knew the answers to those questions scored higher on all sorts of different scales. Fewer behavior problems, academic competence, perceived academic competence, social skills, self-esteem. And I love this study because it makes sense to me. It feels good to have that sense of identity and to know who you are. But also as a mom of two boys, I love this idea that simply sharing my life stories and the stories of my family can benefit my children. It's a great gift. And so that's one of the ways stories benefits us. It's good for us. How else are stories good for us? It builds bridges between people. In our world we live in, lot of isolation, discrimination, marginalization. And reminiscence and oral history can help with that. Groups that don't normally mix together can learn things about each other, and we learn common experiences and mutual interests, and we learn, yes, the unique qualities of someone, but also perhaps how we're not as much different as we think we are. Story sharing or reminiscence or sharing in the stories of our lives, whether it's something we do accidentally or with intention, is not only good for you making meaning in your own life, but it's good for us making meaning as a group, as a society. It's how we locate ourselves in this larger story where we fit in the world. And I believe it's how we do and how we will heal a lot of the suffering in our world. So story sharing has a lot of benefits. It's good for us. And like I mentioned with Betty, not everyone wants to or can reminisce, share their stories, but for most people, it's easy, it's low cost, and it can be fun. So why don't we do this more often? Why don't we do this more often? Check the time. Anybody want to throw out a thought? Why don't we share the stories of our lives more if it's got all these benefits?
You have to have someone who's interested in what's being.
We might not have a listener. That's right. Other thoughts?
May not trust the person that
Trust, right? Vulnerability. Putting ourselves out there to share our stories. And Di heard me speak recently, and I talked about the vulnerability of listening. It's not just vulnerable for the storyteller to share, to put their trust in the listener, but it's also to be a listener, because if we listen, then we might have to act or do something, or we might get in touch with our own memories that we weren't wanting to get in touch with. Other thoughts? Yeah.
Timing.
Timing.
When someone's on their deathbed, you want to hear their stories, not before.
Yeah. Timing and time. Yeah, we say later. I'll do it later. I'll listen later. Yeah. It's not something for some that's natural, maybe like it once was. Maybe there was a time when it was more natural to share stories. And y'all know some things have gotten in the way, distractions. And communities and families maybe don't do this quite the same way we once did. Yeah,
You have to feel it's something that you can do.
you have to feel it's something you can do. Say more about that.
In terms of whether some people like to write things down. And they might not feel that they're competent enough to be able to write it down. And sometimes you need to find other ways to be able to communicate and present the information.
I like that. Yeah, just method, finding a way to share your stories. How are you going to do that?
Right.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
We also don't necessarily value it. Not all of us have all that previous information that you just gave us.
Mhm.
And so the listener or the teller may not value sharing this story. My dad loved a storyteller, a great storyteller, and encouraged us to listen and enjoy it. But I don't get the sense that many people have that same respect, benefits or enjoyment of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky, for sharing that. For those on Zoom that might not have heard, just talking about respecting of the story. And again, the time that it takes to give someone the attention to hear it. Yeah,
Maybe some people don't share because they don't realize the impact that their response could make.
okay.
And I'm thinking of the rain that you had up there. And I was thinking about endorphins. That we release. And I've been told that when you hear about something positive, it releases them. And then if you actually see it. See the person being helped across the street or whatever, it releases even more. Witnessing, I don't know how many of you shop at Target. I bet a lot of you do, but anyway, there's a man over there that does the carts. The most wonderful guy, very handicapped. I always make a point, hi, Michael, how you doing today? And he always has a son. Most people just go by him. And to me, that really releases stuff in me. And then the very best thing is to do it yourself. And I've heard people talk about these things. And so I think people that don't share because they don't know, just saying goodbye or hello or something to somebody has really impact.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, the impact that we can make through our stories. And I hope that maybe comes across some today, but maybe y'all know that already. Yeah.
I think another reason maybe that you just never thought to do it. I know my father-in-law had so many stories that he used to tell me. And unfortunately, I never really thought to document or record those stories until after he died. And now I'm really sorry that I never was to document all of those stories because I never thought of it.
Yeah. We don't think to do it, or when we think of it, it's too late. Or we're too young to realize and appreciate the value. Thank you for sharing.
Whitney.
Yeah.
I've noticed with my grandsons who are in the electronics generation, they don't, between the electronics generation and the isolation of COVID, they do not value the interpersonal interaction anymore. Yes, they game with someone in New York or down the street or whatever, but they really don't value the face-to-face interpersonal. They cannot carry on a conversation.
Yeah. So valuing, and again, maybe it's less natural than it once was in society or for families to just participate in this work. So let's talk about how we can be leaders in this. Yes. Did you have a comment?
Well, I was going to say, so much streaming and so many things on TV and acts that everyone's watching everybody else's life. And they're you know, they're like living whatever vicariously through these people on the screen, instead of looking back and say, I want to live. I'm not living. I'm just existing. I'm watching all your life, instead of having, you know, your family be part of that.
Right. I love that. Interesting point. Okay, number 3, and this connects. We'll kind of hold some of those thoughts that you just shared. Number 3, collecting family stories. Key to good story sharing is listening. I can't talk about collecting family stories without talking about listening. Listening is a really big part of what I do. And listening is what increases those benefits of story sharing. That study that I referenced with Robin Fibish with the young people, it wasn't just a list of facts that those children knew, right? They weren't handed a piece of paper and said, memorize these facts about your family. Part of it was, and they studied this with these young people, it was the space that was cultivated for those stories to be shared in those young people's lives. It was the relationship and the space for the listening. I want you to think of times in your own life, perhaps, when someone has listened to you. And how transformative that is, or when you have fully listened to someone else and it makes a difference in your life. We have to be available. Time, carve out the space is part of active listening. When I'm interviewing someone for these film projects, I usually come home very tired. And all I'm doing is listening and asking questions. But I come home exhausted because active listening is a full body experience. I'm not just rattling off a list of questions. I am making eye contact and smiling, and I'm nodding, and I'm engaging in my posture. And we can tell when someone's not listening to us, and someone can tell when we're not listening. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Active listening also involves not being afraid of silence. And that's a discipline. Oops. And it's not about you. Listening is reminding ourselves it's not about us. So the key to our stories and collecting family stories and the benefits of stories, all that is listening. And so if we want to tell our stories to other people, we also need to listen to others. Like what goes around comes around, right? And maybe there's a young person in your life that you could listen to. And maybe they'll listen to you too. That's an idea. Maybe you'll interview a young person. And again, we could do a whole workshop on the science behind story sharing. We could do a whole seminar on listening and how to do that and how to cultivate that. And the art of the interview, or just the power of listening. A book that I'll recommend for you that's available here at the library is a book called You're Not Listening by journalist Kate Murphy. It's a book for our times. It speaks to a lot of what some of you mentioned. Why in this technological world that we're not listening to each other and how we can reverse that trend. And she talks about some of the psychology, the neuroscience, and the sociology of listening. She gives a lot of practical advice in this book. So I recommend it to you. You're Not Listening, What You're Missing and Why It Matters. Number 4, my top 7, good listeners ask good questions. And asking good questions is part of active listening, but I wanted it to have its own special point and slide. Just because it's so important. Good questions are important. And I love this quote. Every person longs for a good question and a listening ear. Mark Yaconelli said this. He's the author of a book called Between the Listening and the Telling. He's also quoted as saying, every person deserves a good question and a listening ear. So what are good questions? What is a good question? Good questions are open-ended questions. They're the questions that unlock, that help people remember moments that they've lived in their lives. I think we all want to be asked a question about something that we've experienced a long time ago. Our memories and our emotions then kind of bubble up with that. Where do we get good questions? You can collect them like I do, and you just have to try them out, because a good question for you might not be a good question for you or a good question for me. Sometimes we just have to practice. And one way to practice is through just simple conversation starters. I love these because I feel like they awaken different parts of a person. And I listed on your paper, sacredstoriesfilms.com/conversation. I listed some and I printed them out up here for you if you'd like to take them home. Sometimes they're silly and they're fun, and some of them are deep, some of them are easy, some of them are light. I kind of created these for all ages, but they can tap something deeper. Sometimes it It just gets people warmed up and going. It's part of that practicing, sharing in the stories of our lives. And again, not always easy. Some people don't want to share. I think a rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb is to always allow people the opportunity to answer when you're playing a game like this. Or if you're interviewing someone, when I'm interviewing someone, I always give them the opportunity to not answer a question that I ask. Two of my favorite questions. How did that make you feel? How did it make you feel to be the president of that company for 35 years, or to be separated from your family for all those years, or to lose your spouse, or to lose your child? How did that feel? It's a good question that unlocks. And another question that I love, or statement, tell me more about that. Sometimes it buys time for the listener. Tell me more. It's a great statement in parenting. It's a great statement with a friend or when you're collecting family stories. Other places to get good questions. Wanted to share a few resources with you, again, depending on how you are interested or engaging the story. Many universities have different oral history projects that they do. And if you go to the Oral History Association website, which is oralhistory.org, they list a bunch of the different universities and projects around the country. I like this one, UCLA Library, because on the resources tab, it's got family history sample outline. And it's got a list of specific questions that you might ask if you're wanting to do more of like a life review type project. Or you can print them out and reminisce on your own. Another site that I like to speak about, or organization, is StoryCorps. Some people have heard about this. It's a nonprofit that was started by David Isay in 2003 with a story booth in Grand Central Terminal in New York City. And it has exploded to like little mobile story booths that go all over the country, to these stories being housed in the Library of Congress, to an app. There's a StoryCorps app that you can download and record stories with a loved one. StoryCorps celebrating its 20th anniversary. Just wonderful wealth of resources and training on their website. This came from their website. I just screenshotted it. This is a list of questions. Each one of these is a link just to specific questions about different topics related to lives.
They were in
Stories.
Houston not too long ago.
What?
They were in Houston.
They
not
were
too
in
long
Houston, they were in San Antonio. So yes, fun to follow, fun to track where they're going. Another book I want to share with you. This one's not here at the library yet. It's a book called Essential Questions. And the author is a professor at UT, professor of anthropology. It just came out at the end of last year. And it's a wonderful book. Again, good questions. Good questions, not for everyone, but might be a place to start engage with. It's a great book. Yeah.
The author was covered.
Oh, Elizabeth Keating, Dr. Elizabeth Keating. Yeah.
Have you left listening yet?
We're talking about good questions, but that's connected to listening. Please share.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I was a lot of years in education, bringing back some memories. About let's say a teacher who's got a bunch of kids on the playground. And she knows how to do reflective listening. And kid comes in, obviously sad, and you got a lot of choices. Sit down, get your geography, whatever. But she says, Johnny, something wrong? And he says, when we play ball, I never get to bat. And she says, doesn't feel good to be left out, does it? And what that does, it opens up at some point later in the day, it opens up for that child. This, I think, works in child rearing too. I wish I'd have been better at it. The whole idea about what was really going on out there and how do you solve it. And just we brought up a memory from 1960s.
Yeah, I love
I
that.
haven't
Thank
thought
you.
about it in a long time.
Thank you for sharing that. And just a thought come into mind when you say that, if you know a good listener in your life, tell them thank you, because it is rare. And some of you may be those good listeners, and thank you if you are, because it's so important. Another resource I share when thinking about questions, and I don't like to share this resource because I wish I would have thought of it first, but inevitably, whenever I speak to groups, someone brings this up. It's a popular gift out there right now. It's called Storyworth, and Storyworth is a company. They send you a question. You purchase the product, they send you a question a week. I think you can change the questions. They compile all of the answers to the questions in a lovely book at the end of the process. So it's not my favorite resource because I like voice, and I love the idea of sharing our stories with someone and having that listener. I think it serves a greater good, but this is a wonderful product for many people. Yes.
I agree with you. The problem with Storyworth is that you have to write things down. And people like me have difficulty writing things down. I would much rather have people ask me questions, as you were pointing out. Because if you ask a question, it then leads to other things.
Right.
That you might not have written down if you were just trying to answer that one specific question. So
Right.
the Storyworth thing, first of all, you have to pay for it. And then you're just answering one question and you're writing it down. And some
Yeah.
people like me have trouble if you're just writing something down. I would much rather have people ask me questions, because then it leads to other things that you might have thought of if you were just answering one specific question.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, some people love Storyworth and works for them. And some people I've heard, feels like homework or just like a task that they've got to complete on a timeline. And so works for some, not for others, but thank you. Let's see, anything else I was going to say on that? I don't think so. All right, number five, story sharing can be fun. It should be fun. It doesn't have to be all serious and structured. It doesn't have to be a in-depth life review from birth to current times and take hours. Some people are really good storytellers. He just mentioned a teacher or a listener, but people in your lives that are good storytellers, good listeners, good people that know how to do this. I just went to a 90th birthday party last week. Excellent storyteller, a guy with tons of stories, and he loves an audience and likes to share his stories. But for some of us, it's not as natural. We talked about that a little while ago. It's not natural for all of us. For some of us, we need a good listener, and we need a little coaxing to bring forth our stories. And my favorite way to do this is through games, is through story sharing games, keeping it a little light. I'm going to share some of those with you today. One I mentioned, conversation starters. Simply taking questions, putting them in a jar, pulling one out, going around the room and asking. You can take a copy with you. You can print them out if you're on Zoom. And I invite you to take to your next family dinner or to your next happy hour or gathering with friends or visiting a friend. And just try it out. Thank you. Bye. Next is family trivia. Family trivia. Have everybody in your family just write down one fact about their life. And again, I like papers and jars, but put them in a container and pull them out and say, who met their spouse at age 5, or who wanted to go to college but wasn't able to because of a family tragedy or whatever, and a way to engage with, learn about your family. There are products out there. I just saw one on Amazon the other day. I'm gonna get this one, but it's called Do You Really Know Your Family? And it's a game you can buy, or you can make up your own, but just something fun to kind of get us started with the story sharing, because again, it's not natural for everybody. Show and tell, not just for kids. I put a picture of what we think of as show and tell. But show and tell, not just for kids, it's great for adults too. It's a wonderful way to start sharing stories. One of my colleagues has a business called Show in Tales, Tales. And she goes all over the country and hosts these story sharing events where she invites people to bring objects connected to different themes and share in the stories of life. I went to one of hers called Kitchen Tales, and everybody brought an object that was meaningful to them from their kitchen, and wonderful stories and intimacy built with this group. It was on Zoom, but built with people I didn't know. And you could create your own story sharing experience, as I mentioned, or your own show and tell for your family or friends. We just had Mother's Day on Sunday. You could invite people and say, you know, bring something that represents a strong woman in your life or a mother figure in your life. And let's share stories. Think of the stories that might come forth from that. Another resource I want to share with y'all is Family Dinner Project. I like resources, if you can't tell, and I wanted to give lots today just so you can take something home with you. But one is called Family Dinner Project. And your family dinners may look different than they once did, but I love this website and I wanted to bring it up. It's wonderful. This website has conversation starters for all different holidays. And there's one for election season. There's different conversation starters. You can use games to play at the dinner table or wherever, doesn't have to be at the table, but wonderful games suggested on their site, like some of them I'm mentioning now. And some of the science behind story sharing. They have a whole section related to articles and links to the science behind story sharing and the importance of family meals as being a place where those stories are shared. She just recently posted an article called Why Shared Meals Are Good for Adults. So family doesn't just have to be, you know, the biological people that you're related to that live in your house. It's good for us to come together and share a meal. And again, it's where the stories oftentimes take place, not the only place, but it's a good place. And she wrote a book too, which is listed on your resource page called Home for Dinner. I'm sharing that book with young families, oftentimes new parents, because it's a wonderful resource. Number 6, our kids don't want our stuff. So speaking of family dinners, I don't know, and children, our kids don't want our stuff. I've learned this. On July 18th, Cindy mentioned the June seminar here. The July seminar I had to mention is decluttering and downsizing your home. And I know many of us are going through that process. It's a lifelong process. And we're thinking about these things. It's a thing for a lot of people. And our kids might want our stuff, but they want stuff with meaning attached, just like we do. And so how does meaning get attached to stuff? Through stories, through story sharing. And so when we think about decluttering, one way to consider keeping something is whether it has meaning. What is the story of that thing? And then also just to challenge you to think about how you might share the story of your stuff.
Just an interesting observation.
Please.
Speaking of call your stuff, the thing that saves us here in Austin when you move from other areas is that there are no attics and basements.
There are storage units though.
You're right.
We might be talking about that on July 18th. I don't know. A couple resources for you that I love. One is in the back of the room. Morgan pulled it. It's called How to Tell Stories to Children. It's actually got a different cover. This is one cover. I purchased the book and that's the cover, but there's a different cover back there. But How to Tell Stories to Children. And if you have young children in your life, it's a wonderful book with lots of practical advice and helpful prompts. Some of the science, again, behind story sharing. And this book, it's a reminder to me, to us, of what children want and need from us. So excellent book. This book is called For You When I'm Gone. It's not here at the library yet. Highly recommend. This is one of my favorite books by Rabbi Steve Leader. And he writes about we leave more than money and stuff to future generations. And part of our legacy planning is considering what are the stories that we want to leave behind. He writes a lot about ethical wills, and he, in his book, gives some samples of ethical wills. He's also the author of another book, excellent book, called The Beauty of What Remains. So highly recommend his writing. Another resource I'll share with you is an app, if you're into those, called Artifacts. It is spelled wrong. That's their title of their company, Artifacts. It was co-founded by a woman here in Austin. And it's a popular app out right now, and their tagline, pass down memories, not just stuff. It's an app where you take a picture of an object. You can record the story attached to the object, record your voice. You can share it with family. You can create a QR code to attach to the kind of complex, but some people are really into it. And if that's something that you might be interested in, it's kind of a show and tell in app form. And it gives the opportunity, what I love, to create new memories with our stuff in the sharing of the story. Another resource I want to share with you, also a local resource in Austin, wonderful company called Memory Forward. Our photos are linked to our stories oftentimes. Photos are a place where we can reminisce. When I'm doing these legacy film projects, it also encourages people to get their photos organized. But Memory Forward is the name of this company. It's a company that will help you organize, digitize, archive your photos. So an excellent company. And if you call them, tell them Whitney Myers sent you there. Great company, great founder, woman who runs the company. Finally, just encourage you giving the gift of your stories. These are the kinds of gifts that are meaningful. I often ask the question in my interviews, tell me a gift that was memorable or meaningful to you. And oftentimes what's mentioned isn't, a toaster oven or something. It's something that has relationship connected story, some depth there with the gift that was given. And so one way we share our legacy is through the gift of our stories. And so just encourage you to think about, what kinds of gifts represent a piece of who you are. An example might be a recipe you love. Why do you love that recipe? Or a book that you love? Why? If you're in the genealogy and you're sharing this with the family and the archival book of all the ancestors, write a note. Why is this valuable to you? Give the gift of your story in that. All right, moving on. Number 7. There's an app for that. There's an app for that, or a resource. So first, kind of speaking to those of you who know how to use your phone or have a smartphone, and enjoy using your smartphone. The smartphone is a wonderful tool for capturing, preserving, recording life stories. There is a voice memo feature. There's a note feature. It's a wonderful tool in our hands to use to capture stories. There are apps for helping you do this, like the ones I mentioned, StoryCorps. You actually want to record or capture a story with a loved one. You can download the StoryCorps app and it will walk you through the steps of how to do that. Artifacts is another one that I mentioned. There are journaling apps galore, journaling apps that offer those prompts, those good questions for a person that enjoys writing or reminiscing alone. It's an opportunity to catalog some of your stories, to reminisce on, to engage with your story, to remember. A relatively new app is Audivi, and the website is audivi.world. The woman who created this created it for her mother who was living with dementia. And it's an app where you can save your memories, put photos in like a private memory bank or a public memory bank that's shared, and super, super neat product that's out there. So there's an app for that. There's all sorts of oral history kinds of sharing apps. There's also a lot of conversation starter apps that I love. I have a little folder on my phone that is just conversation starter apps because I'm really into that and I enjoy using them with my children or my children's friends. But there's a product out there called Table Topics. That's just a collection of conversation starters. They also have an app that will pop these questions up on your phone. So recommend those to you. Also, there are all sorts of workshops and resources available to you if you are interested in engaging more deeply with your stories or this topic of stories. Here at the library, Lake Travis Library has memoir writing classes on the first Tuesday of the month. And you can come and you can not only visit with other people who might be interested in writing their memoir, but you might do some story sharing there too. They also have genealogy classes here every Friday if you are interested in that topic and engaging with other enthusiasts about genealogy. I mentioned photo organization. There's online resources. There are classes that you can take, organizations that will help you with that. There are storytelling classes and events guided by autobiography. I listed on your paper. YouTube, you can Google active listening on YouTube, how to listen, how to be a better listener. There's TED Talks, how to engage with story. So wonderful resources out there. And I might like to hear some of yours here when we get to the end, if you want to share one. Kind of to bring my time to a close, and then we'll have time for questions. Reminiscence is art and science. There's scientific evidence about how reminiscence works and functions in our lives. Research that's been done. There's also an art to how to draw out the stories of someone's life and our own and engage with our own memories. Yeah, and I'm happy to be a resource to you on any of these topics, either of those topics, how you can engage with reminiscence. There are resources available to you and methods for collecting family stories. I hope I've highlighted a few today. Again, just kind of giving an overarch again, happy to be a resource for you if you have questions about anything I mentioned today. And then a challenge for you all that are here this morning and on Zoom, whose story needs to be heard by you? And how will you share your story with others? And I hope I've given you just a couple ways to think about that this morning. Finally, I guess in conclusion, I just want to say that I take this work that I do very seriously. It's important to me. I don't take it lightly, and I don't think we should take it lightly. Like the gentleman in the back mentioned, what a difference it can make, and sometimes we don't know. From everyday conversation that we have with people, just tell me about your life, or, you know, what have you been up to lately? To those deeper questions. What are the things that have shaped you, made you who you are? It is an honor, it's a privilege to hear someone's stories. And that's why I named my business Sacred Stories. That's the word that I use for it. And I love stories, and I wish I had time to hear your stories today and tell you more about mine, but it gets me excited. So I guess questions, an opportunity for you to share a resource or ask a question, or any that we have on Zoom. Natalie, yes.
I had a question for you. First of all, thank you for making this presentation. It was excellent.
Thank you.
My question is, my daughter-in-law's father kept a really good journal and doing things, and we couldn't really do that. So my kids got me stories worth, and as I mentioned before, we couldn't do that either. That didn't really work out. So my question is, there's actually a question. My question is, my kids are doing an oral history
Awesome.
for me. And they're recording this.
Awesome.
So my question is, once they're finished recording this, and the questions that you've given here are terrific, I will share this with them. The oral history works really well because they ask a question and it leads to 12 other things that we hadn't thought of. But my question is, once they finish with the oral history, which they're recording, what would you suggest that they do with it? Is my question.
In terms like storage,
Or do they need to edit it? I'm not sure when they finish with it, they're gonna have a lot of stuff, which is my favorite word. But what do they do with all these recordings once they have it? Do they need to edit it? Is there a way to keep? Is there something that they should do with it
right?
once they're finished with all this stuff?
That's a great question, and it's different for everybody. I think because it kind of depends on what they are wanting to do with it. What I find in the interview work that I do, the interviews are long.
Yes.
And a lot of content, and it's a lot for people to watch. And so we try to shorten mine down. We do edit because, and it's hard to edit, right? Because you're editing someone's life stories, but often there's repeats, or there's things that, you know, don't necessarily fit the context or whatever that the family may not want to keep. It depends. But I just find that the families are more likely to watch it or engage with it later if it's not so long. So I don't know how long you're talking about, but that's mine. Or break it up into chapters. You know, a lot of people do that, where they just have little snippets of footage so that a family member, a loved one of yours, could just watch a little portion, maybe not the whole thing.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
So,
And I think the act itself, the experience of itself is great exercise for everyone involved. Itself, there's already very, very valuable.
yes,
Yes.
they'll remember that. They'll remember that time
Yeah.
sharing with you, hearing your life stories.
But I
it's
think
like
editing would
a
help
double
because if we edit it, my grandkids might actually watch it.
And your grandkids might edit it.
Right.
They probably have those skills to do that too. Yes.
I
Thank you.
am love stories. I love storytelling. I'm writing a personal memoir, but only for my family, not beyond that. But and this has kind of been the way I have been forever. So I actually have interviews with my mom and my dad and my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, and you are right, they are long. And I have kind of changed and transformed the medium because it's changed so much. So I guess, my question is, maybe I will talk to you about editing all of these things, putting them together, but in perpetuity, how does that work? Because obviously, things are changing so much, mediums are changing so much. How do you keep up with that?
Right. It's tough. It's tough because we don't know what technology is gonna be like in another 50 years. We do the best job we can to preserve it in the best way possible. And yeah, we hope that it lives on for a long time, for multiple generations. But yeah, it's hard. And if you're really concerned about that, I mean, it's great to have it in writing, great to have it on video, great to have multiple resources available to you. Yeah, sorry, not a great question, but we store ours online, and then the families can download it. And it's technology that works now, and I hope long into the future. And we try to give families kind of how to work with that technology so that they know how to utilize it. But it's tough because I don't know what the future holds. And we all probably have, home videos from 30 years ago that now we have to digitize or find a way to upgrade that medium.
So 8mm home movies are gonna go away?
Well, get them transferred, get them updated. Yeah, there are companies that do that too. That memory forward will help with that if you've got a lot of those that you want saved.
That was my attempted humor.
Other thoughts?
There's a couple things from online. One person said can lead to representation and being an example to others. And then also another person said, great presentation, thank you. And somebody asked how to gather information about family members who have passed or who have lost their memory.
That's a good one. So in my work, I hear a lot from people, just the joy of having these stories recorded with a loved one. And then I also hear a lot, people share their regrets of not having done this and their loved one has passed. And what I say to that is record your own stories. So people don't have that regret about you. It's an important reminder to preserve and record our stories and share stories about that loved one who's passed. Record those, invite the family to come together and share stories about the person who's died and record those. Also, I think one of the ways that we honor our loved ones who are no longer with us is just continuing this work of engaging with stories and sharing in life stories and having family meals and talking to our loved ones about the stories of our lives. And that's a way we honor those people who aren't with us anymore. But sharing stories about them and telling others. So, and there was another question in there, and I think it was connected to genealogy or how we learn about family members. And I think a great resource is that the group that's here at the library is people who are doing that work, engaging with that work of researching. There are professional genealogists who will help you, but you can also join a group and find out those resources of how to research ancestors. Where do you go to do that kind of work? Yeah, a club or a group that already knows some tips on that.
I believe the library has access to ancestry.com.
Okay,
So you
awesome,
don't have to pay for it, so
awesome.
if you come here to the group meetings, I think They
Wonderful.
allow you to go online and access ancestry.com.
Wonderful.
Taking out a membership.
Thank you for the Zoom people. Yeah, the library has access to ancestry.com. Is that right? Yes. Thumbs up from Morgan. Other things? Other thoughts? Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you so much for coming in and talking to us, and I know she's gonna stay afterwards, so if you have some additional questions, please spend a little bit of time talking to her, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you.